Welcome to this special edition of The View with Vertex. CISRS, or the Construction Industry Scaffolders Record Scheme, have proposed massive changes to the scheme rules. The most important thing in this whole debate is you, the scaffolder, the person doing the job. If the training benefits you, the scaffolder, it will then benefit the training centres, the NASC, the employers and CISRS, but only if we keep you, the learner, at its heart. Thank you and enjoy the episode.
3 weeks yesterday.
Is that it?
Yeah, that's it.
Probably need to preface all of this with is that there are massive changes.
Yeah, well, I get quite annoyed with that narrative, to be honest with you.
All of the training should be put together by people who have experience in scaffolding. Mark, Paul, welcome to The View with Vertex.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's great to have you. How was the journey?
Yeah, easy for me. I think Paul's had a little
You've
bit
had
more.
Yeah, I come away up from Kent, so it's a bit longer for me, but yeah, happy to be here.
Yeah, so I mean, just to give a bit of an overview and introduce you, Mark, you're the head of technical now with the NASC. Quite a new appointment, a new role for you. How long have you been head of technical now?
So 3 weeks yesterday.
Is that it?
Yeah, that's it.
Why does it feel long? It's just that scaffolding moves so quickly. It feels like it's been ages already.
Yeah, I think the announcement was made a little while ago, but yeah, only recently stepped into the role. So,
Okay.
yeah, so.
And Paul, yourself quite new to your role. You're now the head of, is it training
and education? Yeah, so 3 months. So I'm the wise head, I guess, in the group. But yeah, no, it's been a full few months, I guess you'd say. Yeah.
Yeah, and quite a steep learning curve, I'd imagine.
Yeah, quite a steep learning curve, but a good learning curve.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think what we probably need to preface all of this with is that there are massive changes going on around training for scaffolding. I would say probably the most fundamental changes in the last probably 40 years. You know, things have, they are certainly the biggest changes that have happened in the last 40 years, to my mind. Paul, what's your sort of role in developing those changes?
So my role is looking at the overall strategy and basically modernising it. One of my main areas, I guess, is building capacity in the sector. You know, we need more capacity, and part of that capacity building is basically creating a baseline of quality that can be put across all the training centres. But at the same time, building that capacity also comes with introduction of digital learning, e-learning, and moving away from this old model of classroom, being in a classroom having death by PowerPoint. I went to National Apprenticeship Week, and you could see these 17, 18-year-old kids, and their eyes glazing over, looking at slides. You're thinking, God, and other sectors, other industries are really moving forward with digital learning, hybrid learning, all different ways of catering for different learning levels, learning abilities, and I think that's what we're going to try and do now, because, we have got a skills shortage, we have got a capacity shortage, and my role really is to look at how we build up that capacity in different ways, but at the same time increase quality across the whole sector, making sure that if anyone wants to come in and be a training provider, as long as they meet our quality standards, absolutely, because we need more people to come on board.
Yeah, but I mean, it's definitely been the industry's been waiting for it for quite a long time, I would say. The digitisation is something that's been on the agenda for quite a while. I feel like this is almost this myth that it won't work here. Other sectors, other industries, can implement e-learning, but because it's scaffolding, it's very hands-on. It won't work in scaffolding. Why do you think that that's not the case?
So I used to work for Lloyd's Maritime Academy, which is shipping industry, and I was a course developer for them, and they said the same thing in maritime. They said, you've got guys on ships there, they're not going to bother with e-learning. All they do is, like, they're on the ships, they're working on engines, whatever. They don't care about this. And it was a lot of convincing. We had to do a lot of PR. We had to do a lot of meeting people and saying, look, this is the future. And although you're on your ship now, at some point you're going to come back on shore, and you're going to need to know this kind of stuff, because the world is moving quickly, and I think kind of in other sectors I've seen, it is a case of like everyone has a phone, right? Pretty much everyone has a phone, and translating what they already do on their phone in something that makes them learn and do their job better, more effectively, more efficiently, is only going to be a good thing. So I think it's winning hearts and minds, I guess. It's showing that this is going to help you guys out. It's not like a punishment to say training's going to be more complicated, because it's not. It's going to be faster, it's going to be easier, it's going to be more accessible, and yeah, it's going to be a lot more helpful, I think, for the industry going forward, because you can access it wherever you are, whatever time of night, and that will be the huge opportunity for everyone going forward.
And we must be clear on this as well. Like, there's still going to be a huge practical and classroom
of
element.
Course, yeah, absolutely, of course.
What we're trying to achieve is sort of a hybrid.
Yeah, completely hybrid. I mean, like I said, even with maritime stuff, you still had to have that simulation. You still had to have people actually showing you on the ship how it works, and it'll be the same with scaffolding. It'll be the same kind of like assembling, practical work, disassembly, all that stuff won't change. But what it will do is it will enable training centres to actually put more time into more practical stuff, because all that classroom stuff, some of it, most of it will be delivered digitally. So it will enable more practical stuff being delivered by the experts on the ground.
And how does technical play into that? Because obviously, like Paul, I mean, we should be clear about this straight away. And I know that this is something that gets spoken about quite a lot in the scaffolding industry, is that we need more scaffolding people involved in scaffolding training, and all of the training should be put together by people who have experience in scaffolding. How does technical play into that?
Yeah, well, I get quite annoyed with that narrative, to be honest with you, Isaac, because there's huge knowledge and experience within the NASC, actually within the staff at the NASC. So, supporting Paul's team. I mean, Paul's got a really experienced guy in Tony Barry. Sort of working on the training and education side on this stuff. But also within technical, which feeds into what Paul does. If Dennis Braithwaite, Steve Kearney, Adam Wells, and myself, there's almost 150 years worth of experience there in just 4 individuals within the industry, and that's the global industry as well. Dennis has worked around the globe. I've done a little bit of work in Europe. So there's huge experience and knowledge. And that's not even counting the knowledge and experience with the committees that feed into this work that goes towards that guidance. And it's that guidance that's the foundation of the training content that we put forward. And again, we're working to modernise that guidance, digitise that guidance, which will then feed into the e-learning modules and the bits and pieces that Paul's doing with the LMS. So it's very much a joint piece of work between education and training and the technical.
And I think that's probably something that we need to be sort of clear about. It's having. I mean, we've used the phrase before, haven't we? The right people in the right seats. Mm-hmm. I've seen the way things have looked from every sort of angle. Really, I've had to attend the training courses, as you have, Mark, as a whether that be as an apprentice or a commercial course, and a part 1 and a part 2. And an advanced course. I've had to sit and absorb that from the other side of the classroom
as a learner, yeah. As
a learner, but I've had to also deliver that as a trainer. And there are challenges currently with the way I know we've mentioned the words death by PowerPoint, but there are certainly challenges there that we mustn't sort of shy away from. And as scaffolders, I have knowledge and experience, as I'm sure you do, Mark, and many like charge and black hat scaffolders have got knowledge and experience of teaching a young apprentice or whatever how to base out an independent scaffold or a bird cage, or to do the kind of technical stuff. But the way that looks in a classroom, that really can and probably should be led by people who have experience in learning and development. To absorb that information. And to put that information over visually in a way that sort of hits, we don't know that as scaffolders. You know, we should be wise enough to know that we don't know that, and you know, bring people in that have experience in that background.
I think it's an interesting one. I think the you know, what I've learned over the last 10, 15 years of doing training courses is that, you know, you're continuously learning. You know, everyone's on a lifelong learning journey, whatever stage they're at in their career. And I think, you know, I think, as I said earlier, like, people learn at different speeds, they learn in different ways, they learn, you know, and I think, you know, how you kind of encourage people to learn is by encouraging them to kind of like learn for themselves almost. So if you kind of like imagine someone that says, right, okay, I'm going to be, when I grow up, I don't know, I want to own my own company, for example, right? Because we're not saying people are just going to stop at scaffolders, right? They can be scaffold inspectors, scaffold designers, scaffold company owners, right? I'm going to own my own company. And if they picture that, they then say, right, okay, what do I need to do to get there? And you lay it out. You say, right, okay, you need to do this, 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 and this, and we're going to help you do this, 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 and this. And the idea is you're creating that pathway for them, and you get them to imagine what it looks like when they get there. And every time they get closer, they get in that sense of achievement. And I think with all learning, with all kind of training, all that kind of stuff, it's getting that achievement, and it's getting that and knowing what the next stage is. And if you know what the next stage is and you're picturing it in your mind, it makes it that much more, I guess, pleasurable. So I think part of the training, part of is knowing what you don't know. It's knowing what you need to know. It's knowing what you need to get to the next stage. And you know, it's like any sector. Scaffolding is just like any other sector. Any sector in construction trade, practical trades, whatever. It's putting it into practice on a day-by-day basis and understanding what you need to do to get better at your job and trying to get to the next level.
I mean, we should be clear on this as well. Like, the vast majority of your learning as a scaffolder, as a brickie, as a plumber, as a spark, whatever, the vast majority of your learning isn't done in the training centre.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, the vast majority of learning your craft is out on site.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Do you think that e-learning is going to sort of is going to benefit that sort of you know, going alongside the hands-on learning?
You know, the beauty of e-learning is that you can also, you know, when you're registering, because obviously we have plans for CPD, for example, at some point, and the idea of like registering the fact that you've learned something, you can take a photo of yourself or a video of yourself doing it, put it onto the system, and that kind of shows, you know, your manager that actually you can understand what you're doing. You know, there's lots of tools we can do to kind of embed that training, embed the learning. So the stuff you're doing day to day, you can record yourself doing it. Say, okay, I've learned how to do that now, and you can refer back to it. So e-learning complements that day-to-day training that you're doing. You know, it kind of embeds it in what you're doing, and you know, it complements it in a way that going to a training centre all the time probably wouldn't, because you're kind of like you're getting that. You know, there's so many different things we could do with e-learning now. You know, gamification. You know, short, sharp videos, you know, kind of assessments, quick multiple choice tests, stuff you won't get to do in a training centre necessarily because they're very rigid in how they do it. But we can do things that actually make it more engaging for the, you know, for the learner. You know? And I think that kind of makes it more compelling.
I think me and Mark, we were speaking earlier on as well about, and just to sort of back that point up, about starting with the scaffolder. And I've always been clear on that. You know, we have to do what's right for the companies, absolutely. We have to do what's right for the training providers, because ultimately they provide a service.
They're in business, and we need them.
Absolutely,
we need them to be in business to provide the training.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have to make it, we have to make it viable for them to do that. It's a real collaborative approach. You know, NASC, we all have to be kind of supporting each other. But I've always said, and I've always held the opinion, that you've got to start with the scaffolder, because ultimately the scaffolder will become, eventually, you know, we do the right thing, or can become Mark Collinson.
Absolutely.
It can become, you know, Wayne Connolly, for example. These are the people who are going to eventually own the companies. They are going to be the employers, we hope.
And I think the beauty of e-learning as well is that it can, you know, we can pick up where people are learning best, and we can kind of make changes, you know, pretty quickly. Whereas like with training centre programs, it's a bit more slower. So if we can see that there's a big cohort that aren't necessarily doing well on something, or aren't necessarily, you know, getting up to speed with something else, we can change it. We can change it quickly. We can make those improvements on a continuous basis, based on feedback, based on failure rates, based on comments we're getting. We can change that at a flick of a button almost, and I think that makes it again a lot easier to then control from the learner's perspective, because if a learner says, I don't get this, okay, we can change it. And
we can sort of see what all of the learners aren't getting and what they are getting.
Yeah.
At the same time, which makes it,
But by digitising the whole thing, it means that feedback's instant. We can understand what's working, what's not working. What the learners need, where we need to go next. That's.
I feel the same, by the way, with TG30.
Yeah,
and I know it's another conversation for another day, probably, but it's the same thing, and it's. There's been so much criticism of like, it's not even finished, you shouldn't be putting it out yet, blah blah, and it's like, it has to go out like that because we have to debug it in real time. We have to find out how people are interacting with it, find out what's working and what's not, make changes. And the benefit of having e-learning is that we can do that. We can make changes at the back end quickly and roll them out and improve it all the time. It's the same sort of idea.
People can criticise that, Isaac, but every single one of us experiences it. You download an app and then in a month's time, it's
an update.
You open up the phone and the app's updated. That's exactly what they're doing. They're making those improvements in the background. They're learning what's working and what's not working, and and they're tweaking it in the background, making those improvements. With digitisation, that's what we'll be able to do, and ultimately, like you said, right at the heart of this is the scaffold of the learner. They should be front and centre of all the decisions and everything we're doing, and that's where we've put them. It's all geared around what's best for the learner.
Yep.
How do we get the learner from point A to point B?
Yep.
Be that the company owner, be that into a design role, be that as a scaffolder, a career scaffolder,
look at Ian Caulfield. Do you know what I mean? He's still on the 72 now.
Yeah.
Some people just want to stay in scaffolding, but it's like you've with the CPD kind of thing, you've still got to support people like that.
Yeah, but also it's laying out those different career paths and people to understand, that there are these offshoots of into engineering, into safety, into all these different roles within the industry.
Sales and marketing,
a
huge area. There's so contract management. There's so many areas where I don't think people realise that there is that wide choice available. And that's something else that we're working on. I've recruited someone literally last week who's going to help explore that as well. Look at how we get more people in the industry.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's sort of two-pronged in it, really. You've got to sell the dream ultimately of what it can be and what scaffolding can be and where you can progress to. But you also have to, at the ground level, you've got to sort of sell that idea as like, this is what the trade is. This is what it's all about. You're going to be out in the wet, the cold. It's going to be muddy sometimes, but you're going to be with a team of people that you enjoy working with. There's going to be banter. There's going to be laughs. There's going to be there's a social side to it as well. Yeah, it's getting that sort of the whole thing across to people to bring them into the industry.
Yeah. But we need to sell the industry better. I love this industry, as I know you do, Isaac.
Yeah.
I love the people in it. I love the community around the industry. And I'd encourage anybody to get into the industry. But we don't,
I almost feel like sometimes we're not the best ambassadors for it, though. Even though we're passionate about it, we both really love it. Sometimes I feel like we're not necessarily always the best ambassadors for it, because as you grow, you develop, and if you were to talk to Mark Collinson or Isaac Morrison when they were in their early 20s, we wouldn't be sitting having this conversation. It'd be nothing like it. Do you know what I mean? It'd be football and what happened on the weekend, and I'm sure that stuff still kind of happens, but it's about getting the right message out in front of the right people. People listening to this maybe would be at the level where they're a supervisor, or they're now starting to take the next steps into management, or maybe they want to become a supervisor. But it's getting the stuff out there to the young lads or gals, what it's like at ground level.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I don't think we do a very good job of that. I'm not the best salesperson for this industry. Because the young people.
We've already been through it, haven't we?
Yeah, but different motivations when you're that age, and there's different things that'll resonate with you and talk to you at that point in your life, and I think we need to. you know, some of the younger people within the industry, you know, again, who've gone down some of those routes, you know, so there's some great young engineers, you know, working in our industry. You know, there's some great people in sales, PR, marketing. You know, some of those people probably do a lot better job of selling the industry to the next generation coming in than I ever would.
So, in terms of, like, 'cause we've spoke a little bit about skill shortage. I know it's something you mentioned, Paul, and the challenges of bringing new people into the industry. With the, I know the changes that are taking place kind of behind the scenes. There are going to be changes to the overseas scheme. I'm told. What do they look like? Is there much you can say about that at this stage?
Not too much I can say about it at this stage. It's really going out for consultation soon to our overseas training centres, and then we'll kind of have a clearer idea. You know, the plan is it's going to be an industrial card, but the actual details I can't really say too much more at this stage. Really, until after we've consulted.
So what industrial? What do you mean? How's it?
So the OSTS card at the moment, we've found out that there's more overseas card holders than there are holders of UK cards.
Is that
so? So we've got a challenge. You know, we need to kind of make sure that, you know, we have a global scheme that basically mirrors, you know, what we're doing in a better way. So we're going to consult with our overseas training centres and you know, see what the next stage is.
Because I've heard it sort of mentioned a couple of times that the overseas scheme is different from the UK scheme, and the way the modules are put together are different. How long it takes to achieve the qualification differs. And I know this is something that, you know, you have no kind of bearing on, really, because you've kind of inherited the situation. But my criticism of that would be, you know, if there is an overseas scheme and that there is a different level or calibre of training happening elsewhere in the world, how has that been allowed? Do you know what I mean?
Well, absolutely. And we've inherited something which, you know, is a bit fragmented, should we say? You know, and I think the best way to change that is to standardise it across the globe. We're a global sector. You know, we've got global
aside from that, a human is a human. Well, do you know what I mean? But ultimately, what we're doing with scaffolding training is
absolutely
to keep people safe, and then
absolutely
to have different standards for different parts of the world seems.
It is absolutely, which is why we're doing what we're doing. You know, and I think, you know, when we've got,
so it's to raise the level,
and
bring everything in line.
Bring everything in line.
There's different milestones within that current training, and you know, the achieve points at different times. You know, it's never been completely aligned. That's not to say that people aren't reaching a level of competence and people, you know, aren't safe to be doing what they're doing. But you know, it is markedly different from the current UK scheme. So
we have to standardise essentially.
Just to align that and align those milestones. You know, that part 1, part 2, advanced milestones.
Level 3 stuff. Yeah.
I mean, for me, from the outside looking in, because I've not had really much involvement with overseas training. I've delivered a lot of training here in the UK, CISRS training, but never delivered training overseas. And I've always sort of found it a bit strange that, like, someone could do a CISRS course, it's a CISRS course in Nepal or Dubai or Qatar or the Ivory Coast or, you know, the Philippines or wherever, or the Caribbean. These CISRS centres are all over the world, and that they wouldn't be competent to use that skill, you know, that card in the UK. And I'm not talking about, like, because I know immigration at the minute is a massive sort of topic. I'm not talking about, because he's got this card now he's qualified to work in the UK, but even something a little bit more nuanced, like, you know, this guy meets somebody overseas, you know, and they get married or whatever, and he wants to come and work in the UK, and he's suddenly done a qualification under the exact same training scheme that he can't use to go and work on a construction site in the UK.
Yeah.
Is there a plan to align that so that?
I mean, that is the kind of, like, the plan is to align that and to raise standards so that yeah, the card, the new industrial card, would then make sure that happens. But again, we're going through consultation, so until we know the details, we can't really say much more than that.
It's interesting, though. It's very interesting, and I think it's there are clearly a lot of changes happening. That, you know, I think the thing is that a lot of people have asked for them, and now they're being delivered. there seems to be almost like a negative, like a backlash to these proposed changes.
We're in an industry that doesn't necessarily respond well to change all the time. As much as I love the industry, and I'm passionate about the industry.
These kids with these drills,
and I know
system will never take off.
I know as you are, but
Should I go on?
I think we don't always respond well to change, and people do get set in the ways. I'm guilty of it myself. It's the way I've always done it. I'm fine, but it is time for change. We do need change. It's been recognised. Within the UK training scheme and within the overseas training scheme, and to bring all that together, to align what we're doing, to make that content more accessible. But then that feeds into the overseas training that we'll be aligning as well. All that training, digitising that training, making that training more accessible, putting that training on an LMS, that e-learning platform.
But it's just streamline it all.
Yeah, and I mean the stuff that because some of those global aspects of what we do, that we all look at it on a UK level, and it's a pain for people to get to training centres, and you're taking people out of the work week, and you've got to fund the travel there, and even some of the young learners coming into the industry, aren't necessarily driving, and when them training centres are out of the city, and because of the previous requirements of the training centres, because of where the training centres are located, not the easiest to get to, but we need to make it accessible to those learners as well.
And how are we addressing that challenge? As in to make the other than the e-learning, to make it more accessible?
I mean, apart from e-learning, we're obviously, part of the capacity driving is the, we've issued a new centre specification, for training centres, which will allow more training centres to open up.
Okay. Is there any plan to fractionalise the modules? Because certain things I hear people asking for is that could we not deliver training courses outdoors? To have to do away with, not necessarily do away with, but certainly the practical elements, could we deliver those in an outdoor environment? I also hear, things like, could we maybe start chopping the courses up and delivering them over weekends and things like that? Are these things that CISRS and NASC have looked at?
So, yes. So part of the centre specification does allow for open air training to be delivered. And regarding chopping modules up, at the moment, not sure. I don't think so, because there will be rules around what training centres can do as part of the handbook. But yeah, I mean that's something that we can discuss at some point.
I just think the huge benefits. I mean, we were talking before about the learning at your own pace and in your own time and whatnot. You want to try and make it start with the scaffolder as well. You want to make it. You want to reduce the impact on people's commercial effort for the businesses and time out of the day and earning potential for the actual guys on the courses. I just think if you could modulise the courses so they'd be delivered over the weekend.
Yeah, I mean,
you could really increase the capacity.
I mean, nothing's off the table, is it? But we just need to be careful about what we do and how we do it. At the end of the day, like I say, the learner's front and centre of all this, and we can't impact the quality of that training to the learner. So it's got to be in the right order. It's got to follow the logical sequence of how the information needs to be delivered to that learner, and whether that be through the attend some e-learning or there's some pre-learning that happens before the course. But all of that should help to make it more accessible, and then do that pre-learning and come in with already with the knowledge, having done the pre-learning, verified that knowledge through some kind of skills test, and then to come in. But just to make that whole thing just more accessible, and even some of the conversations we've been having around the CPD, and putting that into a points-based system. So for the larger organisations who are delivering, maybe those updates are coming in, the NASC members, and the guidance gets updated and people get that briefing on the guidance. that feeds into CPD points. So if somebody's accrued so many points, then there might be a shorter duration CPD course because they've built.
Sure, a lot of people would appreciate.
They've built points over a period of time, or again, being able to access CPD content mobile on a mobile and actually build your CPD points on.
Speaking of mobiles, mobile towers, is that something that's going to stick around in the CPD? Because I know that gets a lot of criticism.
Well, yeah, I believe so. Although again, I haven't got the details quite yet at the moment.
Yeah, because I think the second day currently of your CPD is essentially erecting a mobile tower, which I think that is the part of the 2-day program that has got people's backs up the most.
Okay.
It's we don't really erect mobile towers much. If we did, we maybe have a PASMA. I get that it's part of the core module, and I think why not? Why not have something additional that you might need to use from time to time? But I think that the fact that day 2 of the CPD was quite a difficult pill for people to swallow.
I think the CPD thing, the CPD plan, going forward is on my table of things to look at, because I think there should be a lot more that we can do for CPD. Whether it's like you said, looking at guidance. You could do it for attending a jobs fair. Why not get CPD points for going to a jobs fair? Why not get CPD points for being on a podcast? You know what I mean?
Well, there we go. Ticks our boxes.
It's all learning. It's all kind of part of your professional development. And I think
it's how you demonstrate it though, and
exactly.
and how you address the challenge of because I know this is certainly rife when it comes to evidence for the MVQ. It's fabrication. People submitting evidence for jobs they've never been on.
Yeah.
And I think if you just reporting things like I read Scaff Mag, and which is a great publication by the way. I've read Scaff Mag, or I've attended a jobs fair and stuff like that. I get it. I do get it.
I think it's an issue across all sectors.
Maybe for as part of a points-based system for a supervisor card.
Yeah. I mean,
why not?
There's lots of different ways of doing it.
But in the modern world, Isaac, there's no reason why we can't do it. Sort of QR code scanning in at a regional meeting. And there's some updates at that regional meeting on TG30. These are the latest developments around TG30. You've scanned in. Your CPD points go on automatically. You scanned in. You attended that year.
I see.
So
again, for the supervisors and managers, I think that would be a sensible approach. Possibly even the advanced scaffolders. It's how you would achieve that for your kind of part 2 scaffolders. But it's.
But things are moving on at pace all the time, and even the conversations we're having with our digital partners in the digitisation. But those guys are coming in and throwing ideas at us, things we hadn't even considered.
Yeah.
It's separating the wheat from the chaff, I guess, isn't it? Making sure that the right ideas are the ones.
Yeah.
What's the process of consultation around those, like the new ideas that come in? How do you decide which is what? Which strategy you follow
for training or
training?
For training, I mean, me and Clive chat on a daily basis. We have our training education committee, which we liaise with on a regular basis. We talk to the centres. We consult centres on the big changes. There's lots of things we do. But those are the main stakeholders really. But essentially, the really big stuff. It's a consultation process that we go through with centres and other stakeholders.
Well, we've got Clive coming on shortly, so I'm sure he'll be able to fill us in more on those sort of from the sort of strategic level. I think we are probably running a little bit low on time because we've got a few bits and pieces to do today. I just want to say thank you for coming on. It's been really interesting chatting. Probably only met about 5 minutes ago, so it's sort of meeting on camera, Mark.
Yeah,
it's always a pleasure to catch up.
Yep, likewise.
And hopefully we'll see you at the regional meeting up in Durham.
Yep.
We'll catch up again, and we'll see how it all progresses.
Lovely. Thanks very much.
Watch
Cheers.
Space.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers.
Yep. Cheers, Isaac.
I truly hope you enjoy this episode. If you do, all I ask is that you like, subscribe, and get notified every time we drop a new episode.